One. All right, we are back. Money line Monaco. Let's get right into it. Week 6, it's officially brisk in New York City. And as we know, that must mean it's time for real football to ensue. Do not forget to subscribe, rate, review, but also follow me on my socials, Moneyline Monaco on Instagram and on Action Network is where I track all my picks. Gave out Giants plus 3.5 first half, Giants plus 7.5, and tweeted at Alex Monaco on Twitter, Giants money line. Matter of fact, exact tweet was, who's ready for Giants money line? And we needed it under 500 week 5. I'll own it. Really couple of spots I thought would come to fruition. We're going right back at Jacksonville. We're going right back at backing the best in the business on week 6. And just to lay the land, as I often do, one of my favorite weekly articles, grab a lot of insights from there, is our guy at Action Network, Evan Abrams, director of research, pretty much the best in the business at concisely speaking on what happened in the NFL the prior week. And week 5 was a huge underdog week, 9-5 straight up. And actually, it was just the third time, before we get into week 6 picks, just to lay the land here, third time ever in the last decade, 3 dogs of over a touchdown, one outright. One outright. 9-5 straight up in week 5 is the most outright wins by dogs in a single week since week 3 of 2022. And dogs hadn't gone 9-5 straight up or better in a single week since 2017. 2017. Now, NFL closing favorites, 6 points or more entering week 5, 16-2-1 straight up. It was the fewest outright losses by 6+ point favorites in 4 weeks since 1979. Basically, coming off of that, only to go into week 5, and you had 3 upsets of 6+ points. Just to put that in perspective, in English, there were only 2 in the first month of the season. And then you only had 6 of those upsets in the previous 10 weeks, including the playoffs. It was an underdog week. It's been a brutal first 5 weeks for public bettors, unlike last year. But when we say that it is an underdog week, I like, as I metaphorically speak, to throw on the bumper pool lanes at your local bowling alley, and we're going to bob and we're going to weave. Are we going to overreact? Are we going to properly react to that underdog notion? Now, starting week 6, you, of course, had a 7.5 point outright underdog, home divisional dog win with the New York Football Giants just down the street from me. But I think that was a one-off in a number of ways. And you cannot sleep on the short work week and the team in the division getting points. We saw it 2 work weeks in a row with the Niners and the Rams. In fact, it was the same exact 7.5 point line. You often, in those short weeks, need to remind yourself, this is Vegas. Now, you're looking at the New York Football Giants and you're saying, this is how difficult it is. I'm banging my noggin against the wall because they beat the Chargers, who were undefeated at the time. Then they go to the winless Saints and lose. Well, look, 5 turnovers and 5 straight possessions will do that for you. And then they come back and they beat the cream of the crop in the NFC, 4-1 Philly. Look, Philly has a lot wrong right now. They're lackluster and lethargic on both sides of the football. They are nowhere near the class of the NFC right now. And that's just with anyone's eyes, stigmatism or not. So as we take a look here at week 6 and we get into my favorite picks, I think coming off a week where the Eagles lose, and then we go back to obviously last week, the Chiefs lose, the Bills lose, the Ravens lose. This is Bizarro Jerry. We're at Reggie's. We're not at Tom's restaurant. But you have to remind yourself that you still have a gambling gut, and there at the end of the year are still not a ton of year long, I would genuinely feel surprises of who gets in the dance top 7 in the NFC and the AFC. Now, just two quarterbacks put a button on overall trends just to let you know how difficult it's been. It's been two quarterbacks that are undefeated or better as a favorite this season. One has been to a Super Bowl. One has caused gray hairs, pick a borough, any borough in New York City. And that's Jared Goff and Daniel Jones. And outside of that, you got teams across the board that, other than like the Lions, will say, minus their week 1 dud, have been superb. We have the Ravens just trying to get back to healthy. We have the Bills dropping games where, again, I remind you, Sean McDermott is not a championship coach. He got dog walked by Vrabel, who is ready to run through somebody on the Bills offensive line, sleeves rolled up, crouched position. Meanwhile, McDermott looked petrified and scared. And how many times do I have to remind Buffalo Bills backers, this dude is the anti-him? I'm sorry. I could win 9 football games coaching the Bills with Josh Allen as my quarterback. The guy doesn't win in situational spots. Having said that, the Bills still are the cream of the crop in the AFC. But you got Kansas City under 500 playing with their food. Everyone wanted to remind themselves all of a sudden the Ron Burgundy Chargers don't charger. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. As I warned you from that, a freaking 3,000 SoCal miles away, as I know this Chargers team like the back of my fro. So a lot of good, not a lot of great, a lot of situational lack of awareness football teams. And, you know, when we get more into the meat and potatoes of the season, late October, early November, we have to remind ourselves, Belichick once coined there's 2 seasons, before Thanksgiving and after. But now that we have a soft like Charmin league where they don't wear pads and they don't really practice that hard, and 2-a-days are almost a thing of the past, and there's no such thing as a freaking preseason. Meanwhile, I got the Knicks and the Timberwolves in early October banging bodies in a 5-point game at the Garden in a meaningless otherwise game. But Anthony Edwards is starting. But Brunson and Cat are starting. But God forbid anybody of substance in the National Football League, shout out McVay, play a preseason game to get their legs under them. It's almost watching the first game of the NHL season for a lot of these teams. So without overreacting, we got to get back to, I feel, quality football teams. And I am a guy that backed the New York Jets multiple times on the program. We are not touching the New York Jets, maybe the rest of the season. I hope you throw me a little swipe right 5-star just for that. We will not be touching Aaron Glenn's underprepared New York Jets, whether they're across the pond, whether they're at MetLife. We're done with them. We're off them. I also backed the Raiders. So 2 of my 3 losses last week were the Jets and the Raiders. And we will not be doing that this week. This week, we're going back to old school money line Monaco as we dive into our first pick here. And we're going Chalk City, baby. Not to be confused with Roku City. If you have Roku TV, it's an unbelievable watch. So let's get into, without question, one of my favorite picks. And it's a team that we actually faded last week. Now, got chirped a little bit. I read the comments occasionally, not on those videos. I get a ton of comments, but you know, less is more on certain ones. And one dude said he's made a living off of my Seahawks picks. Well, I won that one. We were all over the Tampa Bay bounce back Bucs. Told you to take the 3.5 at the Pacific Northwest. Thought I was pretty solid in the background of this overall head-to-head. And in the dance of former Carolina quarterbacks, we prevailed. Now, I made this little humble lesson last week because a lot of betting, I feel, is just not overreacting to week-to-week football. But if you get a team wrong the previous week and you come back and you bet them again, it's a little more difficult to see the painting clearly. But if you get them right and you come back to that same team, whether you're backing them or fading them, I think you're seeing, unlike me with silly stigmatism, You're seeing the board a little clearly. Well, I'm going to wash that because I have one team I faded and one team I faded going against each other, and the lines move quite a bit. It's flipped. It's flopped. If you could educate a guess where I'm going with it, I'm going right down to Duval County, and I'm fading the flying you-know-what out of the 4-1 Jacksonville Jaguars. I could not feel better about backing a Seattle Seahawks team off a loss in a spot where they're coming off their worst defensive outing on the season by a country mile. Now, I just genuinely think this Jacksonville Jaguars team is a little fugazi. I do. I think this team came back to base camp. I think this team was down 14-0 against a Kansas City team that's just flat out better. But what Kansas City did was they didn't bury him early. They let him back in the game. And then Mahomes did something he almost never does. He throws a pick six. So we have objects in mirror you think might be as they appear. Oh, they are not. If you think this Jacksonville Jaguars team is untouchable at 4-1, after I remind you, they beat the Carolina Panthers. They beat the Houston Texans, who are just figuring out football in 2025. They beat a banged-up Niners team where Lawrence threw for 174 yards. I digress. And they came back on national television on the Prince That Wasn't Promised birthday, and the Kansas City Chiefs gift-wrapped, and gave them an early Halloween present. I mean, that was so anti-Andy Reid, Steve Spags, Patrick Mahomes football on so many different regards. I don't even have the energy to debrief on it. All I know is the Jaguars stole one. And the Seahawks, who are the better overall team, who are the better overall complete defense, are coming off not only a dumb luck pick. We're talking about Sam Darnold. This Seahawks team could be undefeated if he didn't have two game-deciding drives have deflections of his ball that turned into interceptions. I don't know if we want to call him dumb luck, but we're off Sam Darnold driving down the field, maybe going to win a game in the Pacific Northwest against the Bucs. Unbelievable back-and-forth dance. And it nicks off a player and another pick, and that's the ball game. Well, we have to remind ourselves how really banged up the Seahawks were last week. I mean, they were banged up. Gotta love Julian Love, not in. Devin Witherspoon, not in. Obviously, you had DeMarcus Lawrence, key pass rusher on the end, not playing. Woolen, serviceable corner, out, middle of the game. You're going against Baker Mayfield, going against a top 5 offense. Absolutely matters. But you have to realize is the Seahawks defense is top 5 in the NFL, even after last week. They've given up 20, 13, 17, and 17. And everything Jacksonville's had the luxury of. Oh, by the way, they've lost to Jake Browning. I mean, go to sleep tonight and remind yourself the Jacksonville Jaguars lost to Jake Browning. When you punch a Jaguars ticket on Sunday against the Seahawks, I guarantee Charles Barkley you're on the wrong football side. Okay? The Jaguars, what do they do well? They run the football. They've run the football serviceably. This is the third best Seattle run D in the entire NFL. They're giving up 3.3 on the ground. The same reason I told you to fade Mike McDonald at home is the same reason I want you to back him. This dude at home is 13-9 and under 500 against the spread at 9-12-1. On the road, he's 9-1. On the road, he's 6-3-1 against the spread. They're 4-8. 4-8. Oh, excuse me, that original number was his overall number. At home, McDonald is 4-8 straight up and 3-9 against the spread. And on the road, he's 9-1 covering on straight up wins and losses and 6-3-1 against the spread. That's unbelievable. If you want to know how Seattle's been traveling coast to coast, all right, we'll call it that. Since 2018, they're 15-8 against the spread in an Eastern time zone. But without getting too much into the weeds here, you have a Seattle team. Now we have to remind ourselves, the Jacksonville Jaguars, unfortunately, to their credit, are still atop your National Football League at +8 in turnover differential. But reminding ourselves who this Jacksonville team has gone against from a turnover differential, it's part of why I leaned Kansas City, who's +4 in this conversation, top 5 in that category. They haven't gone against a ton of teams that take excellent care of the ball. Now, I think this game is actually going to be a low-scoring defensive chess match, but a Seattle work week. Just get into the mind of the Seahawks, where they did lose the turnover battle, where they didn't play fundamentally sound, and they did really not much well on defense, versus a Jaguars team that is in the building feeling themselves. They could not feel better. They're playing above the rim, above their pay grade, above what Vegas had them. But this is not a 4-1 football team. You're going to Trevor Lawrence was dying to give that game away. This was one of the worst Chris Jones, feel free to put some real effort in, pal, type lethargic ends of the game I've ever seen from this championship pedigree club in Kansas City. I'm telling you, we are selling high off the Jaguars. We are buying, I guess, medium on the Seahawks. I'm telling you, I'm on the right side. Now, it's virtually a pick 'em. Right now, I got them at +1.5. I've inked my picks on Action Network. Just take the 1.5. How many times, even go back to that week where we were on the Niners dancing against the Cardinals, and it was a fluctuating 1.5, 2.5, closed at 3-point spread, and they won by 1. Just don't play with your food on this. Either take the money line or take the 1.5 on the Seattle Seahawks. I'm telling you right now, this Jaguars team was down 14-0 and were dead. They were dead on the kid's birthday. But somehow Spicoli was able to pull it out. I am not a believer in the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm sorry. They need to do it again and again and again for me to believe in Jaguars' low self-esteem football. I just think they're hitting a streak of positive luck, and sometimes that happens for teams. I don't think this defense is who they actually are on paper, and +8, you're out of your gourd if you think they're going to lead the league in turnover differential. It already is pendulum swinging. Buttoned up Seahawks practice. I digress. Let's stay on that Bucs Seahawks sentiment as we go from the Pacific Northwest, cashing a Bucs +3.5 ticket, and we back the Pirates ship in Raymond James -3 against, I couldn't tell you yet who's under center for the San Francisco 49ers. Now, two trains of thought here. Niners off a win they shouldn't have had. Just point blank, McVay has had a photographic sleepless night, probably 5 of the last 7 evenings, knowing he dropped a game to Mac Jones, heaving and hobbling around the field. But I look at this Bucs-Niners game in a couple different fashions because it's a great defensive matchup, if you think about it. Salah's club, top 5. Bowles' club, not top 10 defense in certain categories as they normally are, but they are a top 8 rushing D, key element here. But we're talking about a Baker Mayfield club. He's having an MVP type season. I mean, you talk about 2 quarterbacks just carrying their teams right now. Baker Mayfield is one of the 2 that has to come to mind. But Purdy, again, here we are on a Feel Good Friday, October 10th, didn't practice on Thursday. Mac Jones, limited participant with the knee hobbling and oblique issues. So Purdy's banged up, Mac's banged up. Ricky Pearsall's likely not going. Jawan Jennings is likely not going. Obviously, Ayuk is still on IR. So now we're left with hopefully a starting one of their 2 quarterbacks from a San Francisco point of view, or it's Adrian Martinez. I dare you to tell me who he is. Obviously, I'm a college football fan in Nebraska, but they're going to go with Adrian Martinez against Todd Bowles on the road. Maybe. This is a line that I want you to pay attention to the hook because 3.5 is a big difference here, but I will park my bus and take the Bucs -3, who, yes, they are banged up. But, this whole Shanahan scheme and whole offense is reliant on running the ball effectively to set up play action, to set up the pass. I went and looked. C-Mac has danced 3 times against the Bucs. In his San Francisco career, he's cleared 100 yards once. 100 yards once. Now, 23-20 game last time they danced has that similar vibe here. Shanahan's on extra rest. Maybe you want to know how Shanahan in his career on extra rest. He's under 500. He's actually 5-10 against the spread in this spot with Brock Purdy. So, a Niners team with extra rest, West Coast to East Coast, on 10 plus days of prep, playing in the Eastern time zone. Shanahan is 2-5 against the spread. And with Purdy, he is 0 in that spot. Now, to me, without getting too into the minutia of this game, I just think it's one of those, all right, so San Francisco, it's mildly fishy because part of me feels like this should have a hook on it, maybe be at 4. I'm not quite sure 4.5. It's 2 banged up clubs, but one team might not have either starter. Now, the odds of Mac and Brock likely not going, all right, probably a small percentage. But can we make a case that Brock Purdy's been pedestrian? I mean, Brock Purdy has not taken care of the football. Brock Purdy, according to Kurt Warner, is making some of the most difficult under Shanahan scheme throws he's ever seen in the Shanahan scheme. And let's just say they can't run the football against a top 10 run D with the Vita Vea-led Bucs nearly to their liking on the road. I think you're in hot water here. I think this is a Bucs team. All right. Are they maybe shooting it from the hip a little bit? Game-winning drives in their first 3 weeks? Sure. Win a game off a deflection, essentially in the PNW against the Seahawks? Sure. But it's just good teams find unique ways to win. Good teams find ways to take care of what's in front of them. And I just sit here and I remind you, Tampa's plus in the turnover differential department. San Francisco is sandwiched between the New York Giants and the Cleveland Browns in turnover differential. I mean, this is not like this unbelievably fundamentally sound San Francisco 49ers team. I just think coached up, solid scheme. I think Salah's not getting nearly enough credit as he should, but in a defensive dance with a healthier quarterback at home, I got to lean Bucs -3 here. Let's hope we're not walking into it. Now, theme of this show, as you will hear as we get on, is I'm going to back favorites. And I'm going to back favorites until the wheels fall off on this one. And I hope I don't walk right into this in the AFC North. I really hope. But Dylan Gabriel and the Joe Flacco-less Cleveland Browns head to Heinz Field for a dance against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And might I remind you, the Cleveland Browns have lost 21 games in a row against Pittsburgh. The last time they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, go sit on your couch and remind yourself it was Tim Couch. 03 October. I mean, I wish I was kidding. 2 trains of thought on this one. 3rd straight Browns road game. Brutal scheduling, Goodell. They go to Wembley Stadium. They got to travel back. And they got to go against a team that's been resting since Ireland on a Sunday morning Pacific time that kicked off 6 a.m. Pacific. Huge scheduling advantage. Huge scheduling advantage. 2 weeks for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and TJ Watt lives for these Brown games to prepare against a rookie. And here are the numbers. Mike Tomlin, since 2007, his first year with Pittsburgh, he's danced against 36 first-year quarterbacks. All right? Those first-year quarterbacks are 6-30. When the Steelers are at home against rookie quarterbacks under Tomlin, They're 16-1 straight up on your noggin. The only win was Dak Prescott. Did you know Dan Patrick Sports Jeopardy for 300? I bet you stumped the late Schwab didn't. We're talking about massive discrepancy with protecting the football. Pittsburgh, right where they were last year, second in turnover differential. Oh, by the way, I've been screaming since pre-flop of the season, the Steelers are going to the Super Bowl. Well, Vegas went from 65-1 down to 45-1. Right now, they have dropped 65-1 to 45-1 as the Ravens continue to not believe in Johnny Harbaugh. But +8 for Pitt, -7 for Cleveland, travel disadvantage, rest advantage, and early buys here. Another trend for you to consider. Have bode well very much under the Steelers and Tomlin. They're 9-1 straight up and 7-3 against the spread when they're off a bye in the first 8 weeks of the season. So they're very buttoned up. And Tomlin is 26-6 all time against rooks. I mean, that has to seriously set in your noggin. Now, Dylan Gabriel looked competent, and he looked not over his head against a very difficult Brian Flores scheme to try to understand. There's no question. But there's just something in the Browns-Steelers rivalry as we look at a 5.5-point line that just, you're going to be sick if you back a rookie on the road off of international travel and they are banged up with some of their assets. And I mean, this guy's going to his tight ends. Harold, literally. I mean, Judy had like 3 catches. Most overrated one I've ever seen in the history of modern football in a lot of cases. They just really have one shot at even moving, I feel, the football consistently against this team. And I don't think, in all honesty, a Pittsburgh Steelers team that's bottom 3 in passing is going to show up. But they've just not really defensively had a great effort. What a perfect time for the Steelers to show up and show out against a familiar foe that they've dominated for 21 straight wins. And I think it's just almost Manhattan rent-free in Cleveland's head at this point. They're going to get a lot of pressure on Gabriel, and the only shot they have, of course, is the Myles Garrett-led defense. But I'm looking at this Rodgers offense, and they seem to be pretty locked in. Now, I, again, am taking a home favorite against a top 10 defense in a couple of key spots, so I could very much be walking into it. I won't fault you if you want to back maybe a historical cover in the worst team on the road with the points. Situationally, though, it just doesn't look great. I mean, again, Cleveland, who was pretty much wrapped up to go to win the game against Minnesota, loses and doesn't cover on the 3.5 bad beat. I'm not going to spend another minute talking Cleveland Browns football, but I think it's going to take a few games to see even who they are. And if Quinshon Judkins runs through a wall and keeps them in the game and Rodgers turns a rock over, which he typically doesn't, then all right, maybe they cover the 5.5. It's a hit your pillow Sunday night. Can you sleep 8 hours? I can if Pittsburgh doesn't cover the 5.5. It's moved to 6 at some spots. Let's go Sunday night primetime here. I would wrap up with the biggest game, but let's wrap up with the second to last pick and the Chiefs -2.5. I've seen -2. I locked it in at 2.5. One of the most rare losses, I think, in Mahomes Andy Reid history. I was calling Taylor Swift album week. I was calling Kelsey first touchdown. Shout out to the fiance. It should have been excellent vibes. Having said that, primetime games, you see it a lot of times already through 5 weeks and some change in the National Football League. These home crowds, they get after it. They get into it. A rare historic loss because since Mahomes became the full-time starter, his team was 31-2 straight up, leading after the first quarter and winning the turnover margin for the game. Last loss in that category coming in 2019. Before last week, 30-0 straight up as a Chiefs team when they're up after the first quarter in the last 3 years. 30 wins, 0 losses. Perfect game. No blemish, no demerit after the first quarter in the last 3 seasons. Not since the AFC ship against the bad luck Bengals had they blown such a spot. The thing that's frustrating is they didn't lose the game. They gave the game away. They gave the game away. You're up 14-0. You're going to go up again late. Mahomes throws a pick six. I mean, that's a 14-point swing. A 14-point mistake in a 3-point Vegas line. You could have made the case it was curtains. They got all the way back. They're up 4. They're covering the 3 or 3.5, depending where you shopped. It's 3rd-and-9. And somebody get Chris Jones a Pacino any given Sunday speech. No pressure on Lawrence. Throws a double covered up the seam, long dish to Brian Thomas. It drops in like the Manningham catch from years ago from Eli, and they go down to win the game. It just should have never happened. And all I can say is a Chiefs team under 500 off a national television embarrassment by Chiefs standards, going against a team that could not look better. You have to remind yourself what the public's going to do here. And I think this is a huge spot where the public is going to hammer the Lions. And we have to remind ourselves a couple of exhausting trends out there, but I still have to tell you what Jared Goff is in the comfort, cozy spot of a dome at home and what he is outdoors and what Mahomes is when he's 3 points or less as a favorite or a dog. And we'll start with that. He's 29, Sir Patrick, 12-1 against the spread. When he's a favorite of 3 or less or a dog. All right. The Lions are 4-1. Mahomes has faced 3 teams covering 80% of their games or more this late in the season. 3-0 Kansas City is against teams covering 80%. And another instance of a team scoring 30-plus points of offense. Are we worried this could be an old school shootout, maybe even throwback? Gotta love it. Monday Night Football. Remember, where were you when? Jared Goff, Rams team, dancing against a Chiefs team, and it won a shootout. Well, if it does go a shootout, have no fear, because since 2023, Mahomes dancing 5 times against teams with 30-plus points per game. He's 5-0 straight up, covering by 9.6 points per game in those spots. He's excellent in primetime. He's 19-6. He is 31-9 straight up in night games. And Jared Goff, who is nice and cozy in outdoor games, so we think, is still a lackluster number. He's got 11 outdoor games. Wind's supposed to be upside of 10 miles per hour. He's 6-5 in those games, straight up and against the spread. When he was with the Rams, he was 15-24-1 in outdoor games. Since he's been with the Lions, he's 14-8. It's a better cover. But we have to also remind ourselves this Chiefs team is a pretty solid defense. They're not unbelievable, but they're a pretty solid defense. They're a top 7 pass defense. They're giving up only 190, and there's only less than 8 teams that are giving up less than 200 yards passing. And they're still, without question, in that conversation of top 10 defense. Now, giving up, obviously, a 31 piece doesn't help, but prior to last week, they were giving up top 5 points against. They were under 20 points per game given up. And the other caveat here is Detroit is +6 in turnover differential. Well, now they're going against their best competition yet when it comes to protecting the rock. And I would like to think a Mahomes pick 6 week, another loss for Kansas City. You're going to get a dialed in, professional, best effort evening for the Chiefs against the Lions. They're +4. I'm telling you, I'm looking at the splits. I'm looking at the tickets. I'm looking at the numbers. So many public bettors like the Lions. Sure, rightfully so. Why wouldn't you on a lot of nights? But a primetime back-to-back weeks, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. Now, we'll eat our medicine. If this is a Lions win, would be 5 straight wins. Mahomes losing back-to-back games. I mean, not something that happens very often in his humble career. And, you look at a Lions team that, week 1, which I feel outside of maybe the Cleveland game, they went against their best defense of opponent and they lost the game. It was outdoors. It was on the road. And everyone just thought they were going to win the game. And they put up 13 points, and they didn't look very buttoned up against the Packers, and they got slept. Well, since then, the Lions have put up 52, 38, 34, and 37. But let me remind you, they beat the Bears, the Ravens, who are not who we know they are, Cleveland, and Cincy. This team beat up on the 3 bottom teams in the AFC North and beat the Bears. I just want to see, do I dare say, a look ahead spot to Monday Night Football against the Bucs. I want to see them beat an unbelievable playoff bound team on the road and dare them to do it in a tough spot, ruckus environment, awful loss, pissed off Chiefs team, and a game they gave away. Just keep saying that out loud, and you're on the sharp side. The public is all over the Lions. The professionals on the Chiefs. I'll end that there. Chiefs -2.5. And we wrap up in a game I went back and forth on. Really hope I'm not walking into this. It's 2 games I could be walking into. A couple of games I love. I love the Seahawks. I love the Chiefs. We could be walking into the Dallas Cowboys on the road against the Carolina Panthers, but I watch this Panthers football team and I marvel at how they even string it together. I mean, this team is horrendous. I'm sorry. They're good. The Falcons don't even know who they are yet. So aside from the Falcons, this team has looked good in one half, one other time all season. It's against the Miami Dolphins, who have no leadership, who have no accountability, who are soft as can possibly be, and just aren't well coached. And they're not well prepared. Brian Schottenheimer and the Dallas Cowboys have the #1 offense in your NFL through 5 work weeks. They're averaging over 400 yards of offense. Dak is in the conversation at MVP. He's top 3 in QBR. He's top 3 in touchdowns. He's top 2 in pass yards. He only has 3 interceptions. And the guy is playing unbelievable, even without CeeDee Lamb. So, yes, this could be another exhausting shootout. This could be another one of those just disgusting Carolina games. I just don't think Carolina's particularly well coached. I think we're dealing with a Bryce Young scenario where I don't really know what to make of them yet. 5'9" club's a small club. I'm not even in the 5'9" club. But this is a dude that was down 17-0 to the Miami Dolphins. 17-0. And, you start to look at who the Dallas Cowboys have played at a very 500 through 5 week season. But, this team played the Packers. They played the Eagles. You got to even at least give the flowers to the Giants on the defensive side, especially after that performance on national television. Carolina is just a terrible football team. I mean, they are. So you look at what Dallas is identity-wise, and they're a team that really can only beat you in one way. But Dak has been excellent in his career, 2-1, albeit against the Panthers, but his first loss was 2018. And the guy doesn't have an interception against the Panthers in his last 2 dances, and he danced against them in 2023. 6 touchdowns, no mistakes against a Carolina team that you can make a case was maybe better a couple of years ago defensively. But Dallas, to reel off 30 straight points is pretty impressive. Um, Prescott throws for 4 tutties. Javonte Williams goes for a buck 35 on 16 carries. And, you know, yes, Carolina's got a little rah-rah spirit to them. Rico Dowdle, nice little going against the X game. But, Carolina, I just sit here and I go, what are they spectacular at? Because they're -3 in bottom 10 in overall turnover differential. They are sandwiched between the Bills and the Eagles in points given up, albeit better than the Cowboys, but still towards the bottom 10 of that defensive category. They aren't top 10 in rushing. And the best thing they do is stop the pass at a little bit better than, they're top 15 in the league in pass. But remind yourself, Dak Prescott tore it up against Packers. Pretty good pass D. Serviceable pass D in the New York Football Giants. Tore it up against them. I don't know if you can really stop Dak. So in a game where it could go either way, I feel a Carolina team who had to empty the tank last week. Meanwhile, the Jets, Cowboys game, the Jets are, the game was over at half. It's over at half. You're just managing the clock in the second half. So a cruise control game versus a game where a team had to empty the tank. Two bad defenses, two not particularly unbelievable rosters, but I'm going to back the better quarterback and I'm going to back the better coach. And that's kind of as simple as it gets. I think this is a Dallas Cowboys win. I think you go historically off what Dak does against really bad teams, under 500 teams. And I kind of try, I got the Cowboys game wrong last week. I tried to organize it in my head that this is a team that, all right, not that great. All right, Cowboys, who were on their first game of their road trip, on a second consecutive road trip game, I have a stat for you. Dak started 18 games on a road trip, second consecutive road game or later. He's actually 12-5-1 against the spread in those spots, and he's 9-1 against the spread in the first 3 months in this spot, and he's never lost against the spread in September and October. The Panthers, I'm marveling at this number. They're 5-0 covering the fourth quarter spread. But listen to this. They broke a 65-game losing streak when they're down by more than one possession at any point in the game. 65 games in a row. They're not clutch. They're not timely. I don't know why bettors fall in love with them. I just can't do it. I really just cannot back a Carolina team that they sometimes look. I mean, they were getting 15.5 points on the spread live in the first half of the Dolphins game. You have to be a special kind of mediocre to look that bad against the Miami Dolphins. Carolina, liars. Carolina, not on my mind. Does it help that my girlfriend is from Carolina? Probably not. We'll fade the family, all for the sake of the money line Monaco pot. In conclusion, we are on the Cowboys -3. We're on the Seahawks +1.5. We got the Bucs -3. We got the Chiefs -2.5 at home in primetime against the Lions. And hopefully not AFC North walking into it. We're taking the Steelers -5.5. I'd imagine if you want to fade a couple of these picks, I'm going Chalk City here, Roku City here. There's nowhere to go except for, obviously, finding a way to go up. But we'll do it, and we'll go into the trenches. And I want to wish a special, as I always say, don't forget to hug your mothers. Happy 65th, she'll kill me for it, birthday to my mom. Best mom in the world. Always told me to go for it. Wonderful woman. And we will be celebrating her. I'll be celebrating her from far. My brothers will be going out to dinner with her this weekend. Just want a special shout out to my mom's, who is a big reason why I am where I am today. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, review. Goes a long way. Knicks kick off the season here in the next couple of weeks. I'm doing appearances on the Knicks on MSG all year. You can follow me on the Islanders pregame, the Devils pregame. And we're obviously doing our thing on the Moneyline Monaco pod. Hopefully more hits for CBS as well. So subscribe, rate, review goes a long way. Appreciate you very much. And as always, ta-ta real smooth.